I am really excited about the next keynote, as I was about Mark's keynote, by the way, this morning. So but Anders Arpteg and I got to know each other when I joined the board of a company called Peltalion, which was building a platform for deep learning, and Anders was head of research. Anders has a academic background. He's done a lot of research in his earlier lives. And he was at Peltalion for several years while I was on the board of the company, and then he left. And he actually decided that he felt he had to spend some part of his life serving his country, and he went to the Swedish security services, basically, and spent several years there, basically using AI to protect our democracy and our country, for which I think we should all be very, very grateful that you took that sacrifice. Recently, he left the government and is now back in private industry again. But his whole life, he has been working with artificial intelligence and how to generate value and scale AI in larger context. And that's what he will talk with us about today. So please join me in welcoming Anders on stage.
Thank you so much, John, and it's a pleasure to be here. John is a hero of mine, has always been for a long time, so very thankful for the invite, and also a great pleasure to see you all hear the talks and see the posters outside. A lot of interesting content there. For me, I love to speak about AI, but something I love even more is actually to discuss AI. So I would like to ask all of you to actually do interrupt me at any time during this presentation. And I will adapt the presentation to try to make it in time. We'll see. But please don't be afraid. And I would really love if you at any time ask a question. Okay? Cool. My passion really is about trying to find value from data and AI. And that's actually harder than you think. I've been looking at that, working with that for a long time. And I'd just like to share some of my learnings, my thoughts, perhaps give some tips for actually doing this properly. I hope that sounds interesting to you. Yes? Cool. I see. Maybe not. Now it works. Awesome. Yep, it works. Cool. I'll move a bit quickly then. I'd just like to start a bit with an introduction. And I'm sure you all read all the amazing news that happened in recent times with AI. If nothing else, the Gemini 2.0 just was released yesterday, I think. We had a big 12 days of ship must from OpenAI. Do you heard about that? They're going to ship something each day in 12 days in a row, now up until Christmas from OpenAI. So many cool stuff to speak about here. I think I just speak about one of them. Geoffrey Hinton here. I'm sure all of you, how many here have heard about Geoffrey Hinton? A lot of you, yeah. He is one of the godfathers of AI, also a big hero of mine. He received the Nobel Prize in AI now this year. He just received it here in Stockholm. I actually met him last week, which was a big moment for me. You know what he did? He did a lot of things, but one of the major things he actually invented was the backpropagation algorithm. That's something that is still used today, even though he worked with that in the 80s. But still today in ChatGPT and all basically deep learning based kind of algorithm, this is still used today. He received the Nobel Prize for something else though, the Boltzmann machine, which is basically not used at all. Even he was a bit ashamed of that, but they had to find some prize that's related to physics somehow, so they tried to find something, but not the big thing that he did in AI. Anyway, super cool stuff. I'm actually going to give a bit my view of what AI is, and this may be a bit strange, but if I really want to help companies to understand how to get value from AI, you need to first understand what AI is. And everyone has a different definition of that. And I'd just like to align you, at least with my view of what AI really is. Every time people will come to a new company and they say, I know how to use AI, you just use ChatGPT. And no, there's actually more stuff to AI than ChatGPT. So I'm going to do this a bit quickly, but I think I have a rather beautiful, at least mental model for myself, how AI relates to intelligence and how it relates to the different moments that we had throughout the years. And if you remember back in 1956, it was actually John McCarthy who was the supervisor, my supervisor, when I did my PhD. So it feels like I almost knew him. But he defined AI, and he coined the term actually, as the science and engineering of building intelligent machines. I think it's a rather beautiful definition that still holds, both because it emphasizes both the science and the engineering to find the value. And I'm all about the value. And engineering is really about finding and building value from some technology. And then intelligent machine. What the heck is intelligence, right? And for me, I actually changed my mind on this. And I'm using a definition from a paper from 2019, Francis Chollet. He defined intelligence in 3 words: skill, acquisition, efficiency. And I think this is really good. It really means that it's how efficient you can acquire a new skill, a skill to play chess or drive a car or understand X-ray images or whatever it can be. And if you think about in the early days, you thought you could simply build this kind of intelligent machine by programming the rules in it. You can do a translation service, for example, and you thought you can just program all the grammatical rules into a system and it will learn to or it will be able to do translations. But that didn't work. And they tried for decade to simply program a computer to make it do, for example, translations, but it failed. And then over the years, in like 1980s, with Geoffrey Hinton, etc., they came up with a new working algorithm that allowed it to instead learn from data. So you can think of it as automating a part of the process, the software engineering process of building these intelligent machines. So you can now automatically learn by feeding data into it, translations into it, actually how to do translations. And that was a big, big shift. And for 20 years ago, you did this just with structured data, and that's what's a lot of the techniques I worked with at that time. But they couldn't really work with unstructured data. So that's really what happened since 2012 and forward with deep learning, where you can also in this deep neural network learn to represent the data in a proper way. And then from that representation, also do a prediction. And that's really cool. And that's enabled a lot. But then we have this thing called generative AI. And what's really that? And I think a lot of people have a bit misunderstood the value from that. The value, at least that I see it from generative AI, is not the ability to generate tokens or text or images. The big value in generative AI is really about having general models. You can train it on very simple objectives like predict the next token, but by doing so, you learn a large number of very general tasks. This is very valuable. And for a company that wants to use AI, it's very important to understand this because it enables companies to use AI without having to train it to the same extent. You can actually just feed a prompt to it and say, now you should do this and that. And it can actually do that. That's a very, very powerful ability, which enable companies to find value from AI in new ways that wasn't possible before. I hope you understand and see the point with that, right? And please disagree with me. It's more fun to have a discussion here. So how many agree with me? Do you think the point with generative AI is really about the generality of it? Yes? No? Less than 50%. Oh, please do disagree with me. Anyway, it was another big shift. And then we have something called AGI that may come at some point when we have AI that will be, more efficient than an average human coworker. I like that definition. It's actually from Sam Altman, but I think it's a good definition of what AGI is. And it's a long way to go there before we have it, but still, it probably will come at some point. But think about all these different techniques: rule-based, traditional machine learning, deep learning, generative AI. All of them are actually complementary. Sometimes you use rule-based, sometimes you use traditional machine learning and XGBoost. Sometimes you do image classification with deep learning, and sometimes you use generative AI. And by combining that whole plate of AI techniques, you can find a lot of value in different organizations. And just because I think it's fun, what will happen in coming years then? What's lacking today in generative AI and the big foundational models? Well, I think you all know it. They have a lot of knowledge. So basically you can think of it, ChatGPT has more knowledge than any human has, but it cannot reason to the same extent as humans can, right? So that's what we're going to see going forward. They are trying to add more reasoning capabilities to these kind of foundational models. And basically you can think of it, the way I think of it is, think about AlphaGo or AlphaZero from 2015. That could reason to a large extent, think many steps ahead to play chess or Go or play different type of video games. But it can only do that. It wasn't general, and it didn't have any knowledge. So imagine combining the power of knowledge from large language models with the reasoning power that you have, for example, in reinforcement learning that they made use of. That will be a big step forward. And this is literally what O1 is doing right now and what Google is doing, and every one of these kind of big tech giants. So exciting times ahead. Okay, and on this slide, I think also, I'll do that very quickly, but I think this is good to try to understand, the differences between AI and humans, because they are different. My view of seeing it is that AI is good at some things, and humans are good at other things. AI is really good at going through huge amount of data, but they do it in a very shallow way. But humans can't really go through thousands of pages of text or hours of video to prevent a terrorist attack, for example. But it can go through a small amount of data that has been filtered by an AI and enriched by an AI. And then the human can put that in a context to make a decision about that in a much better way than AI can. So if you believe this, at least until we have AGI, it's kind of obvious how we should use AI. We should use it together with humans. Let AI do what it's good for, and humans do what they're good at, right? I think it's kind of obvious. I'd just like to also speak a bit, why should we scale up data and AI in organizations? And you probably have seen this, the private investments in AI in different parts of the world. We know that US, of course, is progressing and doing that at 10x more than Europe is doing. China is actually going down. I could speak for a long time why China is actually going downwards here in investments. One sentence summary. If you see, there is a curve of number of startups started in China. It has a huge peak in 2022, then plummeted to zero in 1 year. The reason is a lot of reasons here, and I'm biting my tongue because I'm trying to understand what I have learned in my previous job that I can't speak about, and what has been publicly said. I mean, it's kind of sad because it's a really problematic situation for China in many ways. I'll leave it at that for now. Anyway, I think it's problematic that Europe haven't invested more. And I think it's important to understand that we do need to make investment. This is really what I want to say with this. If you invest in data and AI, it will pay off. And this slide shows why it will pay off. Yes. Yes, I think so. I haven't seen the rest of my slides. That's why, I think. No, that's really what I'm trying to, discuss here, because I don't think they have understood it. To the table to the left, we have the most valuable companies in any sector of the world. And you can see it's being topped by the big tech giants. I don't like the term tech giants. I would call it data giants. What's specific for all the top companies to the left side here is that they have scaled their business model by making use of data. If you think about that for some second, I think it's really true. This is the type of value that you can get if you learn how to properly scale data and AI in a company, right? So I hope it's not a question that's a good thing. I hope I've convinced you all that it's good to scale, the value of data and AI in a company. Then to the right, we see Europe. This is the most valuable companies in Europe right now. I would say none of them is a data giant. Yes. Once again, if that YouTube, if that's Brussels. Oh, sorry. It's not regulation. I think the tech giants have really made money, even in Europe, to a large extent. Actually, at my current job, we're rather good at applying regulation. I think regulation is mainly a problem because people have insecurities. They don't know how to apply it, and therefore they play safe instead of sorry. But it is possible to be compliant. But yes, there is a whole. I can speak an hour just about regulations, and it is a problem how they apply it. But it is possible for companies to still be compliant and find value. So I don't want to discourage people from, using data properly and safely. Anyway, I move a bit forward, and just to have some positive notes here as well. We have done a lot of things in Europe and Sweden to try to catch up. And I think in 2018, a lot of politicians and people in power understood, oh, we are lacking behind in Europe. They came out with a number of reports, all basically in April in 2018 from Germany, from UK, from France, from the EU Commission. They all published a report in April in 2018 separately, saying they're going to invest billions of euros into AI. And how did it go? No, but it's good that they are trying, I think. And yeah. And don't if you had said like AI factory in Sweden now, I would be stuck at that topic for half an hour more. And okay, but that's another EU. It's a positive thing. We just got, if you don't know, a big EU funding for a new AI factory in Sweden. Cool new supercomputer. I think it's exactly the opposite what we should do. But that's another topic of discussion. It's fun that we have some money, but then we don't really use it wisely, unfortunately. And that's really sad. In any case, we have a number of initiatives in Sweden. AI Sweden we heard about, so WASP, of course, the Swedish AI agenda, AI Commission just came out with a report. I've actually been part of all of these in some way or form, so I'm kind of proud to at least have been part of a lot of initiatives in Sweden to try to accelerate AI. Okay, to the main topic now. Do you agree so far? Any questions, disagreements? Do you agree that it's good to try to find value from data and AI, right? Yes? Please, Mark.
Competing too much against each other instead of working together. If you look at this of the American companies, they are one company.
Yeah.
It's Microsoft, it's Apple, it's Nvidia. They have one goal. Whereas if you scatter it over all these small organizations, Sweden of AI Sweden, AI Netherlands, etc., then we don't get anywhere.
I completely agree. And in Sweden, we have a saying that, we're so good in collaborating in Sweden. Shit, no, we're not. We do exactly what you're saying. We're competing to a large extent. But I don't want to get too negative now, but it's a very interesting topic, and I'd like to speak for an hour about that as well. Well, let's not do that. Let's go a bit, to the positive side. How do we find, value and scale up data and AI in companies? Well, okay, this slide as well. I don't know, but okay, just building up some, confidence from me. If you do believe that I have something to say about these kind of topics, I've written some articles. John has been part of it as well, and some other people. So we have done some also academic research about this. But I think primarily from these kind of companies that I worked with, that's really how we learned, the organizational side of how to properly scale up data and AI in a company. And all of these do it very differently, and a lot of learnings from all of them. But I think it's I'm trying to compile all my learnings now to apply that in Global Connect, where I work now, and building up that properly from the start, so to speak. So it will be fun times. This is actually one of the first thing I had to deal with when coming to Global Connect. I came there for 2 months ago, and speaking to the management team, they have prepared. I shouldn't say this. Okay, they were really excited about AI and want to get started as soon as possible. And they basically said, we had a consultant coming to us, this summer in 2024. And they said, I can in 3 weeks implement this AI solution. And it will be awesome value for you. And they believed it. That's problematic. And then had an yes. I mean, you hope you understand what I mean. I mean, you have consultants, people, they are selling their time and their services, and of course they want to be able to sell it, but they oversell it. They promise too much to be able to do something in too short of time without having properly built something that is in production. And if me and I think most of you here as well, can build a prototype in 2 days or 2 weeks, that works, but it doesn't provide value. And this is the main point. I'm going to reiterate this time and time again. So this is a big problem. Management of people that is not familiar to proper software engineering and proper AI systems believe that you can find value in 2 weeks. This is a type of hype around AI that is really problematic. And we have to deal with that if we want to properly scale the value in a company. Yes, and a lot of people today also think that AI equals ChatGPT. That's another problem that you have to solve. AI is much more than that. So it's a lot of hype here, and I'm going a bit quicker here, but that's an important lesson. If you can't speak about this, if you don't have a way to communicate and explain to people that building AI systems that are put in production, and it's only when they are put in production that it actually provides value, takes time, takes investment in people and in time and money. Otherwise, you get this. I actually stole this slide from another person, but I love it. This is really one of the major problems that I think most companies have when they try to make use of AI. They have a thesis student coming in, nothing bad about that. That's great to have thesis students. They build some kind of prototype. It's not put in production, of course, but yeah, that's just the next step. That's someone else's job to do the operations part, right? And they see or believe that this is very simple stuff to take the prototype and put it in production, but it's not. It's in a best case scenario, it's perhaps 10 times the work compared to building a prototype. Normally, I would say 100 times the work. If you want to be fully compliant with regulation, having all the data integration in place, and it's not just about building the product, it's also about doing the onboarding and the change management for all the users, if it's inside the company or users outside. That's like 70% of the work. That's insanely much more work than building a small prototype. So what happens is they do all these prototypes, the one after the other. You have 100 prototypes, and none of them reach production, and they feel AI is not for us. It may work for the others, but AI doesn't seem to work for us at this company. That's their conclusion then. This is a big hype. I really want you all to try to fight this kind of discussion as soon as someone say, I'm going to build another prototype, and say, no, do not build another prototype. Do a proper pilot at least. Put it in the hands of proper users directly with real data that is used in the organization. That should be the first thing you aim for. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Agreed. So one big problem, and this is a picture I made, I think 4 or 5 years ago. It was pre-ChatGPT, so to speak, but it still holds very well. This is kind of a map to try to confuse people or try to explain in some way building AI systems is very complicated or complex, and both. I would say complex and complicated. So, I mean, if you just build a prototype, you don't have a proper data management for it. You just do some sample or whatnot, and not really representative data. You may have a simplistic model that may potentially work. You may have some code that is research. Sorry for all academics. I'm an academic as well, but it's research level, not engineering level, so to speak. It's not worthy, and you can't put it in production. And putting it all in production, I saw some poster about MLOps today here, and I love that. That's what we should do research about as well. Finding the value for data and AI, and not the least, the whole organizational aspect of it, being able to do the change management. That's 70% just in the upper left part here. And then we have the compliance work and everything as well. So it's a lot of work. But if you want to put something in production, you have to do the full circle here. And the prototype is a very, very small part of this. Okay, actually going to potentially end with this. This is a bit more like compilation slide of, how do you take the journey from, not being AI ready to become more and more AI mature and actually finding value. And they have this kind of Gartner curve. I'm sure you've seen it. It's up to the left here. In 5 levels, you start at some point and at the top, you're level 5. Your AI is part of the business DNA, part of every part of your organization. It's like Google style. Google said in 2015, they're going AI first. Going AI first means AI is part of every product and service they built with, and they do that from start. Right? That's properly level 5. Very few companies are there, but that's a nice vision to have. But how do most companies then get started? Well, they do get started with a thesis student or some small prototype that are built by some team here in a small silo somewhere, and they see, oh, this seems to work. Cool. Perhaps they even put it in production. Great. Now they have a real value being identified at some small silo, some small part of an organization. And I think we need to scale it now. Okay, so they take another team and they do the same thing again and rebuild the whole process, and they do the full infrastructure part of it, the data management part of it, and they build the model and put that in operations as well. Cool, now they have 2 use cases, 2 silos, and perhaps they even do 3. But it's very inefficient way to scale the value in an organization. You have to redo it over and over again all the time. Okay, so what's the better way to do it? Well, you centralize, right? You send it to the IT department or something. You have a centralized AI team or data team that starts to work with this. And that's better. Now you can reuse the learnings, the expertise. You have a critical mass of people. And I have to speed up. And it goes much faster. But the problem then with centralizing everything into an IT department or a centralized team is that you get disconnected from the business. Now you're not having the business anymore drive the work. You don't have the sponsorship. You don't have management perhaps on board. It's being driven by the centralized IT team outside of the business. And that's not good. Okay, you can take the full decentralized approach and have all the silos working separately, but that's not good either. So what is the best solution then? Well, I would say the hub and spoke kind of discussion here. You have very fancy names. You call it data mesh and so many other things, but the core idea is really that you need to have a hub, some kind of centralized team that has the responsibility to make sure that we have an infrastructure in place, that you have the best practices in place, you have the expertise that makes it possible for other spokes outside an organization to make use of this and do proper, development and operations of that system. I do. Okay, good. Perfect. So there are a number of things you can do here. The top one here being just raise the literacy, the understanding, the knowledge about how to use data and AI properly. Before you do that, you cannot have spokes working properly. So that's one part of the change management you need to do. But then they should drive. They should come up with the initiative. And I remember from Peltarian times, we worked in a company, and this was a medical company, and we thought, from Peltarian side, we have an awesome idea how you should use deep learning. And we told it to them, and they said, yeah, could maybe work. But then they could have the platform, the infrastructure in place, and they could start to play with themselves. And they came up with alternative use cases for AI that proved out to be much, much more valuable. And this is really what you want to obtain. You want to have the business themselves come up with the proper ideas, take the ownership and responsibility for actually deploying and building these solutions, and be driving it going forward. And many organizations then are starting with optimizing the current business processes you do have. That's the normal start that you do. And it's nothing wrong with that. But the big transformation really comes when you can come up with new business processes that wasn't even possible unless you had data and AI capabilities in an organization. That's like Discovery Weekly for Spotify. It's completely impossible to even think of having a product like that unless you have AI to support it. But with AI, you can do new type of products, new type of business processes that wasn't even possible before. And when you come to that point, you will start to see some really transformative improvements in finding value and scaling AI at the company. I'd like to add, if I have 1 or 2 minutes more, in my previous job, I can't say exactly what I worked with, etc. But of course, it was around scaling the value from data and AI in that organization. But we had a very close collaboration with other security services around the world. And I remember speaking to one of them that had been working on this journey for 6-7 years. And they really took the hub and spoke approach to heart. And they could see, they had like 50 plus spokes in their organizations that were data and AI driven, and it really bloomed. They could really see the value. They could see a literal 10x improvement in the way they worked before and the way they are now when they have proper systems in place that can find value from data and AI. 10 times. That's a lot. It was actually measured on two types of terrorist attacks, one in 2012 and another. Now we can start to figure out which service I'm speaking about soon. But anyway, it's amazing what the value can be if you do this properly. I'd just like to end also with a quote from another hero of mine, besides John, Satya Nadella. What he has done to Microsoft, bring it up from something going very downwards 10 plus years ago to something being top of the world again and really driving AI as well, is short of amazing. Nothing short but amazing. And what he basically says here is basically what I'm trying to say. Use humans and machines together. And if we do that and find value properly in an organization, we can do so many amazing stuff in our society. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. We have actually a few minutes for questions because we gave you 40 minutes because we realized that after lunch everyone was a little slower, so they needed a bit more. They couldn't process as quickly. There's one question. Oh, Mark was actually first, and he was a keynote speaker. So we give Mark some opportunity because he has to leave soon for the Netherlands.
Okay, thank you for your nice talk. I really enjoyed it. One of the things that I'm wondering about, and it has nothing to do with AI, it's more about us as software engineers.
Yeah.
I think we are very hype driven. And every time that there's a new development, service-oriented architecture, etc., we sell it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pay off. So what are we doing wrong as software engineers?
Good point. I agree.
Sorry, the other two questions are over there. And Volvo Cars is here as well. Okay, sorry, you've asked.
No, but I certainly agree. I think we as engineers, we are not just about building products. It's really about communicating and being able to sell it, to be frank, and sell it to the organization itself, the users, and also the management team. Unless we can actually properly sell what we're doing in a proper way and build a business case around it, it will fail at some point in time. So I agree.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Thank you for the lovely talk. I have a question for this is regarding research and AI research in the current times. So, as let's say, as a young researcher, would you recommend that you sort of focus on research? Would you focus on researching on large language models and engineering, or large language models and architectural research of these models? Like where do you sort of put your energy and time into? Because you can't really compete with researching on on an architectural level of these giant models.
I mean, my interpretation of the question is, how do I get famous in AI research?
No, but I love the question. I wish I actually had like 10 minutes to talk about it. But in one way, I think you can speak for one from a young researcher point of view, but I think we can speak as the whole academic point of view as well, because we are lagging behind in academia compared to the big data giants that we're seeing in the world. They are doing research, they are doing basic research or foundational research to a large extent, which leaves these academic and young people a bit on the side. And how do we do that? I think we can. I think we should. And I think we should really do research in a way that is for one aiming for finding value. I'm not going to say Elon style, but I think you get my drift a bit. But also that we don't have to use the super big models all the time and the super huge data sets. We can actually do the proper inventions. And I think with this reasoning kind of this example, that can be done without having access to these huge models. So there's a lot of things we can do. And as long as you're finding some proper value, you can see the value from that and going in that direction, I think you're set for success.
Good. I have two more questions, one from you and then from our dear representative from Volvo Cars.
Okay, thank you so much. My question about AI transformation. We speak about center of excellence.
Yes.
And the same pattern, I think, from DevOps, like previously it was DevOps, then DevOps included in the teams. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. And also in data mesh, having the teams also have involved.
Yes.
The same pattern here. The balance is, I think, difficult to achieve, but this question also for the data there for dream theme. How can we find the balance to have the center of excellence, also the teams contribute in this transformation?
A super great question. And one question I got when I started to speak about this in Global Connect was, oh, are we going to have like data engineer in every team throughout the company? Like, is that what we're saying? No, that's not what we're saying. It could be that at some point, if you're at Google level, but we can do so much more before that. Just saying that the people and the teams working with some service or product in the organization have the data and AI literacy, that will be a huge step forward. And then if you do this, we call it like in self-service kind of way. If you have a center of excellence that doesn't actually do the service themselves or build the products or services all themselves, they actually do it in a platform sense, and they provide self-service, saying the rest of the spokes and the teams can do this without having super deep in expertise in data and AI. So if you start to move towards center of excellence that focus on self-service AI and data platforms, then the rest of them can do it much more easily. So that's, I think, is a proper way to do that, to find the right balance, so to speak.
Final question.
Yep, good talk, by the way. I really liked it. What to make a hub and spokes model successful? What key elements needs to be in place? Because what I can see is that on the AI and machine learning side, there is like applied AI and then there is machine learning. And sometimes you take someone that knows machine learning and you try to teach them how to apply AI to do this product. And then they need to also meet the business.
Yeah.
So either you get alienated on one side or either the business doesn't understand what AI can do.
Yeah.
So how do you make this hub and spoke model successful?
Such a small question. No, but it's a great question. Once again, I wish I had half an hour more to speak about it, but just a small set of tips, at least, when it comes to me. I think, putting value first is really something everyone should do, even if it's in the hub, in the center of excellence, or if it's somewhere in the spokes. I'm eager to use the term agile, but I'm afraid when he's standing next to me to use that. But if you do think, even if you build as a machine learning engineer somewhere that's really interested in the technique of machine learning, perhaps not the products as much, even they should have an understanding of what's the purpose of this? What is the end value for me working on this kind of machine learning algorithm here? Unless you can actually see the connection to some kind of product or service that do provide value, you shouldn't be working on it. And you shouldn't let people do that, at least not in a large scale. I'm in big favor of AI experimentation, where you just play around with techniques to learn. That should be done. But as soon as you move into some kind of like proper time where you do development in teams, you need to have it connected to what the value will be. I think if you do have that kind of value-centric kind of mindset, then you should be able, even for a machine learning engineer or applied AI person or a product designer, to all be aligned in the same direction. That's at least a small tip from me.
And be agile.
At least don't use waterfall. I hope we can agree on that.
Good.
Yes.
With that, I would like to ask you to join me in thanking Anders one more time. Anders is my present for us.
Thank you.
Anders will be around until he has a train at 6, he said today, so he will be walking around. So if you want to grab him and have a one-off discussion with him, a one-on-one discussion with him, please do so. He loves talking about this stuff, in case you had any doubt.
Yes.
So with that, Anders, thank you so much. And please, we have one more presentation before we go to the breakout. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg.